Good morning and welcome to the December 2022, almost end of the year, open meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Madam Secretary, will you please introduce our agenda today?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning to you and good morning, Commissioners. For today's meeting, you will hear 5 items for your consideration. First, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking that would take the step in the Commission's efforts to promote equal access to broadband by seeking comment on potential rules to address digital discrimination of access to broadband, consistent with Congress' direction in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Second, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking seeking comment on changes to the Commission's rules, policies, or practices to facilitate the acceptance for filing of satellite and earth station applications under Part 25 to help Commission processing stay apace with the number of innovation satellite applications in the new space age. Third, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking regarding a proposal to require wireless carriers and covered text providers to implement location-based routing on their networks in order to reduce misrouting of wireless 911 calls and texts and improve emergency response times. Fourth, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking and order on reconsideration to propose Telecommunications Relay Services Fund compensation for Internet Protocol Captioned Telephone Service, IPCTS, propose a technical amendment to the compensation formula for Internet Protocol Relay Service, and resolve petitions for consideration of a prior order setting IPCTS compensation. Fifth, you will consider an enforcement action. This is your agenda for today. The first item is titled Implementing the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Prevention and Elimination of Digital Discrimination, and will be presented by the Wireline Competition Bureau, and Dawana Terry from the FCC Task Force for Preventing Digital Discrimination will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms. Terry, please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. The Task Force to Prevent Digital Discrimination and the Wireline Competition Bureau are pleased to present for your consideration a notice of proposed rulemaking that would, if adopted, further the Commission's efforts to promote equal access to broadband internet access service and prevent digital discrimination of such access consistent with Congress's directive in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I would like to thank the Wireline Competition Bureau for their collaboration and hard work, as well as our colleagues in the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, the Enforcement Bureau, the International Bureau, the Media Bureau, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, the Office of Economics and Analytics, the Office of General Counsel, and the Office of Managing Director for their contributions to this item. In addition, I thank Sanford Williams, Alejandro Rourke, and the task force team for their great work and support in this cross-agency effort. Seated at the table with me are Bradford Berry, Senior Advisor for Digital Equity and Inclusion, Aurelie Matthew, CJ Ferrero, and Jamie McCoy, Attorney Advisors in the Wireline Competition Bureau's Competition Policy Division. Aurelie will now present the item.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Both Congress and the Commission have recognized that full access to broadband internet service is a national priority. The need for high-quality, affordable broadband throughout our nation has never been greater than it is today. Congress tasked the Commission in November 2021 Infrastructure and Jobs Act to take steps to facilitate equal access to broadband and prevent discrimination of access, digital discrimination of access based on income level, race, color, religion, or national origin, while also identifying necessary steps to eliminate such discrimination. In March of this year, the Commission adopted a notice of inquiry, launching a broad inquiry into how to construe and implement the language of the Infrastructure Act as it relates to digital discrimination. This notice of proposed rulemaking, if adopted, would build on the robust record offered by a broad array of stakeholders in response to that notice of inquiry and seek further focused comment on the statutory language and the proposals suggested in the record, with the goal of establishing a framework for facilitating equal access and preventing and eliminating digital discrimination. The notice of proposed rulemaking would propose to adopt a definition of digital discrimination of access, as that term is used in the Infrastructure Act, and would seek comment and further details on the proposed definition. The notice of proposed rulemaking would also propose to revise the Commission's informal consumer complaint process to accept complaints of digital discrimination of access and to adopt model policies and best practices for states and localities addressing issues of digital discrimination. The notice of proposed rulemaking would seek comment on the rules the Commission should adopt to facilitate equal access and prevent digital discrimination, including whether to adopt a broad prohibition on digital discrimination of access, place affirmative obligations on providers of broadband internet access service to prevent such discrimination, and utilize the Commission's existing enforcement process to investigate and address complaints of digital discrimination. The notice of proposed rulemaking would also seek comment on the legal authority of any adopted rules. The task force and the Bureau recommend adoption of this notice of proposed rulemaking and request editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench, and we're going to start with Commissioner Carr, who looks like he brought some reinforcements this morning.
I did, for sure. Well, thank you so much to the Bureau and to the task force for all of your hard work on this. As was noted in the presentation, Congress came together in a bipartisan way and tasked the FCC with looking at digital discrimination of access. And so I want to thank the chair in particular for putting the resources into this and bringing this forward. And look, at the FCC, we've been working together really in an unprecedented way to address some of the persistent features of the digital divide. You know, one thing that we've done is stand up a historic $24 billion worth of low-income initiatives over the past 18 months or so alone. And what we're seeing already from that initiative is families being pulled across the digital divide. And some of that has to do with these low-income programs that we've stood up are a lot more attractive and robust than some of our existing Lifeline initiatives. So I'm really glad to see the progress that's been made there. And more broadly, we've been trying to focus on where the digital divide remains in our connected care telehealth proceeding, for instance, that I've been able to help work on along with my colleagues. We specifically prioritize there providers that are going to focus on low-income communities. And so again, I'm pleased with the progress we're making. And stepping back, we really have this historic opportunity when you look more broadly at the Infrastructure Act and the $40+ billion that has been made available to our good friend on most days at NTIA. And if we get that right with that $40 billion, or even if you step back even further by my count, there's over $800 billion that could be used for various broadband infrastructure and digital divide efforts. If we get these policies right, we really have an opportunity here to end the digital divide in every single one of the features that it continues to persist. But again, here in particular, this is something that Congress came together in a bipartisan way, asked us to look at. I'm glad, again, that the chair is bringing that forward. I very much look forward to the specific ideas that are put in our record that we can identify, that we can act on at the FCC, and I really look forward to continue to make progress across all features of the digital divide that remain. So thanks again to the team for all your hard work on this.
Thank you. We will now hear from Commissioner Starks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Much of what we do here at the FCC will last years, decades even. But some of what we do will impact generations of Americans. This is such a proceeding. Eradicating digital discrimination is not just a promise for today, it's also a guarantee for a more just and equitable future for tomorrow. So that's why I am truly thrilled to see on a bipartisan basis that we've been able to work together in support of this deeply important goal. With this NPRM, we move one step closer to completing not only our statutory obligation, but truly our moral obligation to facilitate equal access to broadband and prevent digital discrimination. Let's talk about where we've come, where we're headed. The record developed under the 2022 Notice of Inquiry helped define the scope of the work here before the Commission. The next step is what we do here today, and that is to seek key questions that will shape our future solutions. How do we define digital discrimination of access? What services and entities should be covered under our rules? What practices and policies should be prohibited? In posing these and other questions, Commission staff have done an excellent job, inviting us to consider all possible proposals while also putting the public on notice that we continue to move forward because progress here is important. Past claims that there was just no business case to deploy services in certain communities are just that. They are stuck now in the past, thanks to the Affordable Connectivity Program and the proven evidence that we've seen that consumers will sign up for broadband if you make a quality service available and put in the effort to reach them. I look forward to the digital future that we all deserve, the one where no community struggles to find basic connectivity while others pass them by with constant service upgrades. So I do thank the chair, as well as my colleagues, for this item here. There are a couple things that I want to highlight that were suggested edits by my team and me. First, that is beginning well before Congress directed this inquiry. The Commission has long worked to ensure that regulated entities deliver their services in a non-discriminatory manner. This context here is truly important. I appreciate that the item now makes the effort to harmonize our work in this proceeding with that larger, broader framework for ensuring universal service and reasonable access to communications technology for all. Second, the item now seeks additional input on something that is near and dear to me, and that is enforcement. Our rules need to achieve multiple goals. We must be able to identify digital discrimination where it is, eliminate it where it is happening, and prevent it from occurring going forward. As a former enforcement official at the Department of Justice and, of course, at the FCC's Enforcement Bureau, one of the biggest questions in my mind for this item is what remedies should be at our disposal. I want to make sure that we develop a robust record on this point in particular. Finally, the item now seeks additional comment on potential reporting requirements or information that providers should be submitting to us. How can we use that information to prevent further digital discrimination and ensure compliance? We need to consider how data is going to inform our statutory duties here. To close, input from all stakeholders is imperative here. I urge all interested parties to continue to engage with all of us here, engage with the FCC staff to help us make these right policy decisions to protect Americans. I thank truly the fantastic work by the staff here today. It has my strong support.
Thank you. And we will now hear from Commissioner Symington, who will be joining us from afar, so he is the voice from above today.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this item. It asks the right questions and will hopefully lead to a robust record that will help us craft final rules that do not adversely affect broadband availability or affordability. Thanks.
Thank you. You know, if you open up the Communications Act, on the very first page, you will find that Congress tasked the Federal Communications Commission with making communications available to all the people of the United States without discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, or sex. Now, despite that soaring language, we know there has long been a digital divide in this country. We know because too many people in too many places do not have the broadband connections they need to participate in modern civic and commercial life. Plus, the pandemic brought home just how important those connections are for everyone everywhere, and that we have work to do to reach those who are still unconnected, underserved, and overlooked. That is one of the driving forces behind the bipartisan infrastructure law and its historic $65 billion investment in broadband. This effort includes, of course, the Affordable Connectivity Program that is now helping more than 15 million low-income households afford broadband all across the country. But Congress knew that more was needed, and dollars alone are not enough to do the job. That is why Section 6506 of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law directs the FCC to work to ensure that all of us benefit from equal access to broadband. It requires the FCC to create rules to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination of access based on income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin. The urgency here may be new, but that language really is not. Look closely. It echoes the command right at the beginning of the Communications Act. But Congress has made it clear that we need to give it new meaning at this moment. And this won't be easy, but we are committed to doing it right. And getting it right means thinking about these issues in a new way. So here's what we've done so far. We created the Task Force to Prevent Digital Discrimination, which is leading our outreach on this proceeding and related issues. We also rechartered the Communications Equity and Diversity Council and broadened its lens, looking beyond media to explore diversity and equity across the broader technology and communications sector. And in every FCC rulemaking, we now seek comment on how the rulemaking may impact diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So that brings us to the task at hand, issuing rules to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination. We started this process with a notice of inquiry seeking comment on key terms in the statute like digital discrimination, equal access, and technical and economic feasibility, in order to hear from the public about just how we should interpret them. We followed up with a series of listening sessions with stakeholders led by our Task Force to Prevent Digital Discrimination so we could hear from affected communities, people fighting digital discrimination on the ground, as well as experiences with industry. Because the only way we are going to create rules that prevent and eliminate digital discrimination is by hearing from everyone who has a role to play, including state, local, and tribal governments, public interest advocates, and providers. Today, we move forward with a notice of proposed rulemaking, and this document, of course, builds on all of those earlier efforts. That means we now seek more targeted comment on how to define digital discrimination. We also propose reforms to our consumer complaint system to create a dedicated pathway for digital discrimination complaints. And we propose to adopt the model policies and best practices for states and localities that our Communications Equity and Diversity Council recently adopted. So getting to final rules next year will require more engagement, more collaboration, and frankly, just more work. The input we have received so far from stakeholders is an awfully good start. But to get this right, we still need more input and ideas because we can't reach our goal of connecting everyone everywhere unless we eliminate digital discrimination. So let's get to it. All right, lots of thank yous to the staff across the agency who worked on this effort, including Bradford Berry, Emily Kaditz, Kelly Coker, Matthew Collins, Rashawn Duvall, Lisa Edwards, Connor Ferraro, Jesse Goodwin, Jody Griffin, Trent Harkrader, Heather Hendrickson, Oriel Mathieu, Jamie McCoy, Kiara Ortiz, and Haley Steffen from the Wireline Competition Bureau, Alejandro Roark, Samantha Steen, Dewana Terry, and Sanford Williams from the Task Force to Prevent Digital Discrimination, Monica DeLong, Garnet Hanley, Susanna Larson, John Lockwood, Jessica Quinley, Joel Tabenblot, Matthew Warner, and Marcia Younger from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Ed Bartholomew, Diane Burstein, James Brown, Ediel Kasparalta, Daryl Cooper, Barbara Esbin, Aaron Garza, Bambi Kraus, Sayuri Rajapaksa, Suzanne Singleton, and Kimberly Wild from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Loyani Gall, Lisa Griffin, David Marks, Rosemary McHenry, Lisa Sachs, and Ashley Tyson from the Enforcement Bureau, Hillary DeNigro, Evan Morris, and Holly Sauer from the Media Bureau, Ken Carlberg, Scott Cinnamon, Deborah Jordan, Nicole McInnes, and Zenji Nakahawa from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. It keeps going. Kara Grayer, Maura McGowan, and Joy Ragsdale from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, Mark Azik, Patrick Brogran, Johanna Fisher, Eugene Kiselev, Julia McHenry, Eric Ralph, Michelle Schlater, Marcy Wakala from the Office of Economics and Analytics, Marlena Barzilai, Terry Kavanaugh, Jacob Lewis, Richard Mallon, Linda Oliver, Karen Onigi, William Richardson, William Scher, and Elliot Tarloff from the Office of General Counsel, and Thomas Buckley, Daniel Daly, Celia Lewis, Mark Stevens, Sarah Stone, and Kara Voth from the Office of Managing Director. And that is a lot of people making a lot of efforts. We will now proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Well, first, I want to echo those thanks, and Brad Berry in particular. Very little known arcane fact, but I played on the same softball team with Brad Berry over 30 years ago. And I'll let you try to figure out how that is impossible that happened, but that is a true fact. But as to this item, I vote to approve.
All right. With commentary. Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 2 on your agenda is titled Expediting Initial Processing of Satellite and Earth Station Applications, Space Innovation, and will be presented by the International Bureau. Troy Tanner, Deputy Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Tanner, please go ahead and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. I'm pleased to be here today to introduce, as part of the Commission's Space Innovative Initiative, a streamlining proposal to accelerate the review of satellite space and Earth station applications. As the new space age rockets ahead, we have found it necessary to increase our own speed of application processing so that we don't stand in the way of innovation and U.S. leadership in this sector. We have identified several ways we can accomplish this related to our initial intake of these applications. The notice of proposed rulemaking before you today examines the rules and procedures governing the initial review and determination of whether an application is acceptable for filing and therefore ready to start the public comment part of the licensing process. The NPRM proposes ways to expedite and improve this process. These proposals, if adopted, will facilitate the licensing and deployment of space and Earth stations in this growing market. I'm joined at the table today by Carrie Murray, Deputy Chief of the Satellite Division, and Clay DeSalle, a Senior Attorney in the Satellite Policy Branch. Clay will present the item.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning, Commissioners. As the Commission sees unprecedented activity in satellite licensing, the notice of proposed rulemaking before you would explore ways to streamline the processing of satellite and Earth station applications, to provide greater transparency and predictability to applicants, and ultimately to expedite action on proposals for innovative new satellite systems. Under current Commission policy, satellite and Earth station applications are reviewed for substantial completeness and compliance with Commission rules before they are accepted for filing and placed on public notice. This item considers rule amendments and other changes to accelerate the acceptance for filing review in 4 principal ways. First, the item proposes to remove a procedural rule that formally prevents consideration of satellite applications requesting waiver of the table of frequency allocations to operate in a frequency band without a corresponding international allocation. In doing so, the item seeks comment on whether to provide specific guidance to applicants on the types of information they should provide in support of such a waiver request. Second, the item invites comment on facilitating the acceptance for filing of certain non-geostationary satellite applications by allowing applicants to apply for more than one unbuilt non-geostationary satellite system in a given frequency band. Third, the item provides expected processing timelines for satellite and Earth station applications and seeks comment on updating or codifying processing timelines in light of current levels of licensing activity. Finally, the item invites comment on how the Commission should address inconsistencies or omissions in satellite and Earth station applications, such as by assisting applicants to cure the defects or by quickly dismissing the applications so they can be correctly refiled, and seeks comment broadly on other process updates, rule changes, or policy reforms the Commission could adopt to help streamline application processing. In order to seek public comment on ways to expedite the processing of satellite and Earth station applications, the Bureau recommends adoption of this notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks so much to the team for their work. I think it's really heartening to see all the interest and ideas are being generated to help ensure that the FCC continues to accelerate its review of various satellite applications. I think it's going to be vital to ensuring that America gets to extend its leadership in space. In fact, earlier this month, there was a really good bipartisan bill introduced in the House by Chairman Pallone, Ranking Member McMorris Rogers, that would do exactly that in terms of help accelerate U.S. leadership. There's a lot of really good ideas in their legislation, including shot clocks and deemed granted provisions. And I think a lot of what we're looking at here in our proceeding can build off of and really use the ideas in that bipartisan legislation as a guiding star as we look to land this proceeding to an order. I look forward to the record that develops and tracking a lot of those good ideas. So thanks.
Commissioner Starks.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As I've said before, we're in a golden era of commercial space. U.S. companies are leading the way. They're fueling discovery and innovation around the world and beyond it while creating thousands of American jobs, including manufacturing jobs right here at home. With so many countries seeking to enter that space race, we need to keep momentum going here in the U.S. That means finding new ways for government to keep pace with what clearly is one of the most dynamic sectors in our technological future. One way to speed things up is to reduce how long it takes to accept applications for filing. And so I'm proud to support this NPRM. In recent years, we've seen an unprecedented number of satellite and Earth station applications, many of them containing novel proposals, operators who want to launch mega constellations, deploy Earth stations in motion, push the envelope on remote sensing missions. They want to relay data to other satellite networks, explore in-space service, assembly, manufacturing opportunities. So much is going on. Some in the industry are working on interoperable user antennas, beaming satellite connectivity straight to your smartphone, democratizing access to the space economy by selling space infrastructure as a service. Needless to say, our existing rules weren't built with all of this in mind. The NPRM suggests that our requirements for filing acceptability may be delaying in the processing of these applications. If that's so, we must fix the problem. Applications that show promise still deserve our full consideration on the merits, even if they propose something new that challenges the old playbook. So I'm pleased that the chairwoman and my colleagues also supported a couple of edits that I suggested. We should streamline processing for any reasonable application that poses no harm, whether it proposes only to receive signals or whether it includes a transmission component as well. Furthermore, we should require applicants to support their claims of non-interference. We shouldn't impose an unreasonably high evidentiary bar just to begin processing the application. That could otherwise deter those strong applications, especially from smaller operators. Instead, we should rely on petitions, comments, and other pleadings to help draw out information about the viability of those proposals. This is the regulatory process in action. Thank you to the Bureau for their hard work on this item. Has my support.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm pleased to approve today's notice, which will facilitate and streamline satellite and Earth station applications to more readily accommodate the ever-increasing volume of these applications as the satellite service sector grows. These proposed changes open a dialogue about how to best accommodate providers' business plans without running afoul of international authorizations. It also allows the Commission to revisit some of its rules to ensure that they're responsive to the rapidly evolving marketplace for satellite services. I'd like to thank the staff of the International Bureau for their very hard work on this important item. It has my support.
Thank you, commissioners. Telstar 1 was launched into orbit in 1962. It was the world's first communications satellite. It ushered in a new era of connectivity and demonstrated that the Federal Communications Commission's policies could support privately sponsored spacefaring missions. This was big and a sign in our skies of what was to come. Because the tremendous growth in the space economy we see right now is also fueled by commercial activity. Space is no longer just the province of our political superpowers. In fact, continued United States leadership in the emerging space economy requires thoughtful collaboration between the public and private sector. In particular, it requires this agency to update its policies to support the expanding range of commercial opportunities in our higher altitudes. In other words, the new space age needs new rules. And if you want further evidence, consider the number of applications for satellites and gateway Earth stations before us. It's never been higher. They're also a whole lot more complex. On top of that, we are seeing new applications for novel space activities like lunar landers, space tugs that can deploy other satellites, and space antenna farms that relay communications. In fact, the way that constellations are designed, satellites are manufactured, launches are organized, and even how systems are upgraded and replaced, they're all being redesigned and reimagined. But the organizational structures at the agency have not kept pace as the applications and proceedings before this agency have multiplied. And you can't keep just doing things the same old way and expect to lead in the new. That's why last month I launched an effort to create a new space bureau. This reimagined bureau will help support our leadership in the emerging space economy, promote long-term technical capacity to address satellite policies, and improve our coordination with other agencies here at home and abroad. But reorganization is just one tool among many that we are using to drive transformational change. Across the board, we're looking at ways to update our rules, increase staff working on these matters, and speed up the satellite licensing process. So you know our efforts are already yielding results. In fact, in the past 6 months, we've reduced our Earth Station application backlog by more than 20%. And the rulemaking we start today will help us build on that kind of momentum. In it, we propose to change the way we process space station and Earth Station applications. Right now, when we receive them, they're supposed to go on public notice to begin building a record about what has been proposed. But too many applications get bogged down before this critical first step. So we ask about ways to speed up this process and get applications on public notice sooner. We also seek comment on rule changes that would reduce the need for waivers that slow down and complicate review. In addition, we ask about timelines for both satellite and Earth Station applications and a whole bunch of other ways just to streamline our processing. This is just one part of the licensing process, to be clear, but it really matters because keeping our rules and our structures at this agency current is how we are going to support United States leadership in the growing space economy. And on that score, I also want to thank Chairman Pallone and Ranking Member McMorris-Rodgers for their leadership on these matters through their bipartisan legislation. Working together, I know we can foster more of the kind of boundary-breaking innovation that made Telstar 1 possible 6 decades ago. And with that, I want to thank the staff who have made this latest entry in our space innovation agenda possible, including Clay DeSalle, Jennifer Gilsonan, Neshe Gundelsberger, Carl Kenziger, Carrie Murray, Tom Sullivan, Troy Tanner, and Marissa Velez from the International Bureau. Deborah Broderson, Dave Konskow, and William Richardson from the Office of General Counsel, Liselle Himmelberger and Marilyn Simon, Don Stockdale, Emily Talaga, and Alex Yankovich from the Office of Economics and Analytics. Thank you to all of them, and we will proceed with a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 3 on your agenda is titled Location-Based Routing for Wireless 911 Calls and will be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. John Evanoff, Chief of the Policy and Licensing Division, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Evanoff, please proceed.
Good morning, Chairwoman Rosenworcel and Commissioners. If you call 911 for help, every minute, and indeed every second can matter. For first responders to reach you as quickly as possible, your call should be routed to the 911 call center that serves the jurisdiction from which you are calling. Unfortunately, that is not always the case if you call 911 from a wireless phone. Currently, most wireless 911 calls are routed to the 911 call center associated with the cell tower that first receives the call. Sometimes, however, the 911 call is routed to the wrong call center because the cell tower is not in the same jurisdiction as the 911 caller. This can happen when an emergency call is placed near a county border, for instance. These misrouted 911 calls must be transferred from one call center to another, which consumes time and resources and can cause confusion and delay in emergency response. It is estimated that as many as 12% of wireless 911 calls nationwide are misrouted. Today, we present a notice of proposed rulemaking that would require wireless carriers and certain text providers to implement location-based routing for wireless 911 calls and texts. We believe the proposals in this item would help those in need of emergency assistance to reach the right 911 call center the first time and receive the help they need more quickly. With me today from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau is Rachel Ware, an attorney advisor in the Policy and Licensing Division. I would also like to thank the other Bureau staff who worked on this item, as well as the other bureaus and offices that contributed. Now to Rachel.
Thank you, John. Good morning, Chairwoman and Commissioners. Today, we present a notice of proposed rulemaking that seeks comment on requirements for routing wireless 911 calls based on the location of the caller as opposed to the location of the cell tower that handles the call, a technology called location-based routing. This technology can help ensure that the first 911 call center that receives a call is the one closest to the caller and the one that can dispatch emergency responders. The Commission first sought comment on the feasibility of location-based routing in a notice of inquiry released in 2018. Many commenters on the notice of inquiry said that location-based routing was potentially feasible with further technological advancement. Since then, there have been significant technological advances, and some wireless carriers have started to implement location-based routing on their networks. In June of this year, the Commission adopted a public notice to refresh the record on the state of location-based routing technologies and their implementation. The Commission learned that location-based routing appears now to be technologically feasible. In June of 2022, AT&T completed the rollout of the technology on its network and currently uses location-based routing to deliver 911 calls and texts to nearly all 911 call centers nationwide. As of July 2022, T-Mobile reported that it was offering location-based routing to more than 700 call centers. Verizon has indicated that it plans to start work in the first quarter of 2023 to enable location-based routing nationwide. Implementing location-based routing on a nationwide basis has the potential to provide significant public safety benefits. Jurisdictions where carriers have implemented location-based routing are experiencing fewer misroutes, fewer transfers, and faster dispatch times. One estimate indicates that the nationwide location-based routing would reduce 911 misroutes by 85%, or from 23 million misrouted wireless 911 calls to 3.45 million per year. Given the potential benefits of location-based routing, this notice of proposed rulemaking proposes to require all wireless carriers and covered text providers to implement location-based routing for 911 calls and texts nationwide. Specifically, the proposed rules would require wireless carriers and covered text providers to deploy technology that supports location-based routing on their Internet Protocol or IP-based networks and use it to route 911 calls and texts when the caller location information is accurate and timely. The proposed rules would require wireless and covered text providers to fall back on the best available location information for routing when the location information does not meet proposed requirements for accuracy and timeliness. In addition, in order to support location-based routing for next-generation 911 jurisdictions, the proposed rules would require wireless carriers and covered text providers to deliver 911 calls, texts, and associated routing information in IP format upon the request of 911 authorities. The Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt this notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks. Just over a year ago, I had the chance to visit the 911 call center in Fayetteville, Arkansas. That's where I met with Kathy, the dispatch director. And as she gave me a tour of the 911 call center there that night, introduced me to some of the call takers, she noted that they get about 40,000 calls a year for help at that one facility alone. And for anyone that has spent time at a 911 call center, which is definitely all of my FCC colleagues, any one of them can tell you that there really isn't a lot of downtime at these call centers. The phone is always going off. Well, flash forward, and Kathy, the woman I met that night, ended up filing a comment in our proceeding here. And she said that they evaluated the number of 911 call transfers they have and determined that roughly 30% or more of the 911 calls received are missed routes due to calls hitting cell towers that border their jurisdiction with others. So 40,000 calls, roughly 30% missed routes. If I do my math right, that's over 12,000 of those calls. And there's two problems with that. One, as we've heard about, is it takes minutes away when seconds can make the difference. And again, given the high call volume at a lot of these small call centers, it's taking up resources in two different 911 call centers that we don't need to have. And so I'm very much supportive of the chairwoman in bringing forward an item that could look to some technology solutions to help end, or at least make a big dent in those cell tower-based misroutes. In fact, Kathy ended her comment addressing this by saying making this available, this type of technology, nationwide would most definitely make a huge impact in our communities and save lives. And I think Kathy's right. And so I'm really glad that we're moving forward with this proceeding, and I hope that we do so in a way that's going to support our 911 call takers that are, truly the voices of hope in times of darkness. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Improving access to 911 stands out as one of our most important responsibilities at the Commission. I'm pleased to approve today's item on location-based routing. If adopted, the rules we propose will reduce the number of 911 calls and texts that are misrouted to the wrong public safety answering point. They'll push the wireless industry to evolve to more precise call routing technologies that are available, that work, and have been implemented by some carriers already. 911 has been around for over 50 years. Back in the era of copper, of course, you could generally trust the network to connect you to a dispatcher who possessed the authority to send help to your physical address. Fast forward to today, and the vast majority of 911 calls are now wireless. Yet many of these calls still are misrouted. Here in the DC area, over 100,000, according to one estimate, sent to the wrong call center. In other words, while it sure has become easier to place a call during an emergency since the 1960s, the system in some ways has slipped backwards in getting that basic bond where the call needs to get to the right place on the very first dial. It bears mentioning that location-based routing isn't just good for those who need help. It's also good for the public safety community, as you've heard already from colleagues here. I also was in the PSAP there in my hometown of Kansas City just last month. Same theme. In addition, they told me to crushing call volumes, staff shortages, complex technology migrations, cybersecurity challenges. They also told me about the time that they spend in transferring callers in and out of their jurisdiction. And we can also reduce how often PSAPs really need to deal with that incoming transfer, which is truly those lost precious seconds and minutes. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you again, Rachel, for all you're doing for the American people. Thank you.
Commissioner Symington.
I'm happy to support this item that proposes strong measures to ensure that wireless 911 calls are routed to the correct PSAPs. Misrouted calls can mean long delays in the dispatch of life-saving help, and where available technology would allow mobile carriers to do a better job, I support rules requiring that they do. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. When you call 911, you want to reach the right public safety officials who can send help to the right place at the right time. Now that sounds simple, but it doesn't always work that way. And I know, because some years back when I visited the emergency call center in downtown Little Rock, so I too have an Arkansas story, but this one stays with me. It was chilling to see this in person. because the professional staff showed me how calling 911 in the corner of the center wouldn't get answered in Little Rock. Instead, it would be answered by a call center in North Little Rock on the other side of the Arkansas River. That's because the call was routed based on the location of the closest cell tower and not the actual location of the call. And the truth is, what I saw that day is not all that uncommon. As we've heard, as many as 23 million wireless calls each year may be misrouted to the wrong public safety answering point using legacy 911 systems. We can fix this, and we should. In 2018, we kicked off an inquiry to explore how location-based routing technology can help address this problem and speed up 911 responses. Earlier this year, we refreshed the record in that proceeding, and since that time, we know that some of our largest carriers have started using this technology in their networks. So today, we adopt a rulemaking that proposes conditions to require location-based routing nationwide. We do this because improving call routing will improve communications in crisis. But there are other steps we're going to need to take to update emergency calling to next generation 911. That's because we need to make sure that the more than 6,000 public safety answering points across the country are not stuck with old systems that were designed for the era of analog calling. We need every one of them to be able to take full advantage of the digital age with emergency communication systems that support voice, text, data, and video, as well as feature more redundancy to help prevent outages. These generational improvements in public safety are necessary, and support for them can come from the auction of our public airwaves. That's why I continue to believe we have to work with Congress and first responders to use the billions of dollars that our spectrum auctions raise to assist with the transition to next generation 911. With our spectrum auction authority still the subject of legislative discussion, this opportunity is still out there. I want us to seize it, because the steps we take today are only part of what needs to be a broader and bolder effort to improve 911 for everyone, everywhere. Now, thank you to the staff responsible for this rulemaking, including David Firth, John Evanoff, Brenda Boykin, Rasul Safavian, Ashley Teller, and Rachel Werr from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, Elizabeth Mumma, Jeremy Marcus, and Ashley Tyson from the Enforcement Bureau, Joy Ragsdale and Shauna Wilkerson from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, William Richardson, Douglas Klein, and Keith McCrickard from the Office of General Counsel, Emily Talaga, Kenneth Lynch, Eugene Kiselev, Alex Yankovich, Chuck Needy, Patrick Sun, Patrick Brogan, and Paulo Lopez from the Office of Economics and Analytics, Ethan Jeans from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, and Elizabeth Drugula and Heather Hendrickson from the Wireline Competition Bureau. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 4 on your agenda, improving accessible phone services, will be presented by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and Alejandra Rourke, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Today, the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau presents to you a notice of proposed rulemaking and order on reconsideration on Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Service. IPCTS, a form of telecommunications relay service, helps people with hearing loss connect with friends, family, and others by using a caption telephone. If adopted, the item would seek comment on proposal to strengthen TRS fund support for IPCTS by modifying the compensation methodology for the service. The item also includes a proposed technical amendment to the Commission's rules on TRS fund support for Internet Protocol Relay Service. And I would like to really take this moment to thank the Consumer and Governmental Affairs staff for their hard work on this item. I'd also love to thank the Office of Economics and Analytics, the Office of General Counsel, the Office of Managing Director, and the Office of Communications Business Opportunities for their contributions to this item. Joining me today at the table is Diane Burstein, CGB Deputy Bureau Chief, Elliot Greenwald, Deputy Chief of the Disability Rights Office, and Michael Scott, Attorney Advisor in the Disability Rights Office. Happy to turn the time over to Mike to present the item.
Thank you. And good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. I am pleased to present this draft notice of proposed rulemaking and order on reconsideration. The item before you proposes to modify the methodology for setting compensation for Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Service, or IPCTS. This service enables a person who can speak but who has difficulty hearing over the telephone to simultaneously listen to a telephone caller and read captions of what the caller is saying. IPCTS is entirely supported by the Interstate TRS Fund. Until recently, telephone captions for this service were produced by communications assistants, typically with the help of automatic speech recognition technologies, or ASR. In 2018, the Commission also authorized TRS fund support for the provision of IPCTS on a fully automatic basis, using only ASR to generate captions. The current compensation plan, based on average cost, applies the same permanent compensation formula to IPCTS, regardless of the captioning methods used. The notice of proposed rulemaking would seek comment on the proposed new 3-year compensation plan for IPCTS based on average cost for the period from July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2026. Under this proposal, IPCTS providers would be compensated in different amounts depending on whether captioning for a telephone call is provided using ASR or with the help of a communications assistant. While fund-supported research has found that ASR-only captioning is faster and often more accurate, there is also research indicating that CA-assisted captioning may be better for some categories of telephone calls. Pending further exploration of these service quality matters, the item would propose separate cost-based formulas for each service mode so that providers are not incentivized to favor one service mode over the other based on compensation considerations. The notice would also propose to revise the allowable cost criteria for IPCTS to permit TRS fund support for the reasonable cost of research and development to enhance the functional equivalency of IPCTS, acquiring North American numbering plan telephone numbers for IPCTS users, and providing certain user software for accessing IPCTS on devices. In addition, the notice would seek comment on whether and how to annually adjust the compensation levels during the 3-year period to reflect cost changes due to inflation and productivity. In addition to these IPCTS matters, the notice would propose a technical amendment to the compensation formula for Internet Protocol Relay Service, or IP Relay, to clarify how the compensation for the service is annually adjusted to take account of inflation. The accompanying order on reconsideration would deny the petitions of T-Mobile USA Incorporated and IDT Telecom Incorporated for reconsideration of the Commission's 2020 IPCTS compensation decision, as well as the joint request of 6 IPCTS providers to maintain the IPCTS compensation level at $1.42 per minute for the 2021-2022 TRS fund year. The Bureau recommends adoption of the item and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks. IPCTS enables the many Americans with hearing loss to stay in touch with family and friends, call for help in an emergency, and otherwise communicate in ways that others take for granted, as we heard from the presentation today. And I've had a chance to visit with some of the IPCTS operators that are working in various call centers, and it's more than just a job for many of them. A lot of the operators I talked to told me that they were drawn to this line of work because a family member with hearing loss and their desire to help other Americans that rely on the service to communicate. I think the development of automatic speech recognition technologies, ASR, is potentially a really good thing. And as we move forward in this proceeding and we look at potential rate structures, I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind and balance is how do we get a rate structure that creates the right incentives for the availability of ASR while also making sure that we have operators in place when that makes sense. So that's one issue that we're going to have to balance going forward, but I very much look forward to the record as it develops and working with my colleagues on this. So thanks.
Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you. The FCC has twin obligations here when it comes to telecommunications relay services. First, and most important, we are charged with ensuring that those who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind, or who have speech disabilities can communicate in a manner that is functionally equivalent to those without such disabilities. Second, we must be good stewards of the funds used to provide these services and ensure that they are used for this critical purpose. Today's action continues our important work of fulfilling our second obligation by asking whether different rates should be applied to Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Service when the service is provided by an individual communications assistant, as opposed to on a fully automated basis by ASR. But asking these questions necessarily raises the issue as well of functional equivalence of these options. In particular, I have stated and still remain concerned about potential algorithmic bias in ASR. As I raised nearly 2 years ago, studies have shown that speech recognition systems make far more errors when transcribing the speech of people of color than their counterparts. I thank the chair and the team for working on my edits here and referencing this issue. In particular, there was a Spanish-speaking CEO that I spoke with here recently who said that ASR does not even work for him, and he is in this arena. Earlier this month, I was privileged to visit a video relay service, VRS, call center just outside of Washington, D.C. Individuals who communicate using sign language use VRS, another form of TRS, every day to make those phone calls that many take for granted. One of the people I spoke with recalled deeply how the technology opened doors for him, how it enabled him to go after his life goals and dreams that had previously truly seemed out of reach. And so I often speak about the importance of ensuring that all Americans are connected in today's technological world, and I think this is no different. We must continue to improve and support all forms of TRS, including IPCTS VRS, because unequal communications services should not stand in the way of anyone's goals. So I thank you for the hard work on this, Chair, as well as to the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for the hard work on this item. No further comments at this time.
Thank you, Commissioners. At the heart of our responsibilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act lies the concept of functional equivalency, though it sounds like language only a lawyer could love. For millions of adults with hearing loss, functional equivalency matters. It means they can pick up the phone and seek emergency help, work with colleagues, make a doctor's appointment, follow up with a child's teacher, and connect with family and friends, just like their hearing counterparts. At the FCC, we give meaning to functional equivalency by ensuring that there are services in the marketplace that can assist those with hearing loss and help them use communications. Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Service, or IPCTS, of course, is one of those services, and it allows those with some residual hearing to use their own voice to speak during a call, but then read captions on their device when the other participant in the call responds. So as technology has evolved, of course, so has IPCTS. Some providers now use automated speech recognition to provide service instead of traditional IPCTS, which requires human intervention through the use of communications assistants. So in the rulemaking we adopt today, we seek to reflect these changes in a way that I believe will honor functional equivalency. First, we recognize that as new technologies emerge, we need to ensure that they meet basic service quality standards for everyone. And we take note of our ongoing work to establish appropriate measures for both forms of IPCTS. Second, we propose to compensate providers differently depending on whether they are providing captions on a fully automated basis or providing them through the use of communications assistants. I look forward to the record that develops. I also look forward to continuing to support IPCTS in a way that acknowledges technological change and is also consistent with our duties under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So thank you to those responsible for this effort, including Diane Burstein, Ediel Casperalta, Elliot Greenwald, Josh Mendelson, Ike Offenbeck, Alejandro Roark, Michael Scott, Ross Slutsky, and Dana Warwick from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Kara Greer from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, Terry Kavanaugh, Richard Mallon, and William Richardson from the Office of General Counsel, Susan Lee, Kim Matchich, Michelle Schaefer, Emily Talaga, and Andrew Wise from the Office of Economics of Analytics, and Sumitra Das and Andrew Mullitz from the Office of Managing Director. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges just as requested. Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, we are going to let you read that line because it's for item 5. I'm just trying to move things along.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 5 on your agenda is an enforcement action and will be presented by the Enforcement Bureau, and Loyan Igal, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. I'm just trying to keep it moving today. Because this item is an enforcement action, we're going to switch up the order just slightly, as the Commission has done in past cases that involve a similar presentation at the open meeting. As with all open meeting items, the Bureau circulated this to every one of my colleagues at least 3 weeks ago, but there is a longstanding practice at the agency. We do not publicly disclose pre-decisional matters unless and until the Commission decides to take action. For these types of items, that means the agency formally votes on the item, then here's a brief presentation from the Bureau before proceeding to any statements that commissioners may have. This process ensures that sensitive matters will not be publicly disclosed until the FCC has voted to take action. We are following that precedent here. So we will now proceed directly to a vote on item 5. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges if requested. Mr. Egal, please proceed with introducing item 5 on today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners. Today's item, a notice of apparent liability for forfeiture against the Cox Jones Enterprise, which is comprised of Sumco Panama SA, Sumco Panama USA, Virtual Telecom KFT, Virtual Telecom Inc., Davis Telecom Inc., Geist Telecom LLC, Fugel Telecom LLC, Tech Direct LLC, Moby Telecom LLC, and Posting Express Inc., collectively responsible for making billions of apparently illegal robocalls regarding auto warranties. With me today at the table are Lisa Gelb, Deputy Bureau Chief in the Enforcement Bureau and Chief of Staff, Christy Thompson, Chief of the Telecommunications Consumers Division in the Enforcement Bureau, and Jessica Manuel, an Attorney Advisor in the Telecommunications Consumers Division. The sheer scope of the conduct involved here is astounding, and the NAL follows targeted action that the Enforcement Bureau took earlier this year to disrupt this illegal robocalling operation and the access that its web of domestic and international companies had to the U.S. communications networks. And with that, Jessica will present the item.
Thank you, Loyan. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. This notice of apparent liability for forfeiture finds a group of entities in the United States and abroad, which we refer to as the Cox Jones Enterprise, apparently liable for making robocalls without obtaining the requisite consent in violation of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act and Commission rules. We also find the enterprise apparently liable for using misleading caller ID in apparent violation of the Truth in Caller ID Act. We propose a forfeiture of $299,997. The Bureau found that between January and March 2021, the Cox Jones Enterprise apparently made more than 5 billion robocalls to more than 550 million phones. The calls apparently were made without the requisite consent and without the requisite disclosures, such as providing identifying information and a callback number that would allow call recipients to opt out of future calls. The item also finds that the violations of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act were apparently intentional. The robocalls marketed auto warranties to consumers throughout the United States. The pre-recorded messages encouraged call recipients to follow prompts to speak with a warranty specialist about extending or reinstating their car's warranty. The notice follows action that the Bureau took in July, which directed all US-based voice service providers to take immediate steps to effectively mitigate suspected illegal calls from the Cox Jones Enterprise. That order had a direct and significant impact on reducing auto warranty robocalls, according to industry analytics. The Bureau verified 33,333 of these calls for apparent violations of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and the proposed fine is based on those verified calls. The notice of apparent liability for forfeiture proposes a base forfeiture of $4,500 per each of the calls that we verified, with an upward adjustment of 100%. The notice of apparent liability for forfeiture also finds that the Cox Jones Enterprise apparently violated the Truth in Caller ID Act by unlawfully spoofing the caller ID. The Bureau determined that the Cox-Jones enterprise used more than 1 million unique telephone numbers from 297 area codes, apparently to defraud, cause harm, and wrongfully obtain something of value. For these reasons and the additional details laid out in the Notice of Apparent Liability for Forfeiture, the Enforcement Bureau appreciates the Commission's adoption of this item and requests the grant of editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thank you so much to the team for your work. Thanks, Jessica, for the presentation as well. I'm glad Loyan is on this. This was a very, very big investigation, and we need to continue to go down these types of paths, obviously given the scourge of robocalls. But thanks to the chair for prioritizing this, and we've got a great team on it, so it's got my support. Thanks.
Commissioner Starks.
Thank you. Well, we've saved the best for last. This is, of course, EB, my favorite of the bureaus.
It's a little bias
don't
there.
don't tell anybody else. Don't tell anybody else. We all know and agree that robocalls are a scourge, but they've proven extremely difficult to combat. But under the chair's leadership, we've started a number of things that I want to highlight here. That is coordinating across the government and the private sector, joining our expertise and resources to bring down illegal robocalling operations altogether. Today's action is an example of how successful this cooperation can be. It was the Ohio Attorney General who brought this matter to our attention. The industry traceback group provided information key to our identification of the entities primarily responsible here for generating and transmitting these illegal calls. It was, of course, the Enforcement Bureau here that did the hard legwork in addition to building and bringing this case. And of course, they did so using the authority that Congress has recently given us in the Traced Act to propose a forfeiture like this without having to first go with a citation. So without a doubt, these are the type of operations that we need to be going after. As alleged, the parties in interest in this matter made more than 5 billion robocalls in 3 months. 5 billion calls in 3 months. It's staggering. It's hard to get your head around, except for the fact that we all continue to get these calls. By taking a major player like this off the board, we've seen those real results. After the 1-2 punch of Ohio filing its suit, the FCC authorizing and directing U.S.-based voice service providers to stop carrying traffic made by or on behalf of the parties here today, the volume of this particular brand of pernicious call that was going out here, auto warranty spam calls, fell an estimated 5 million per day in June of 2022 to just 1 million. That's an 80% reduction. That is a real counterpunch for the American people here. So thanks again to the team, to the chair, to the chief. Jessica, thank you for your presentation. And of course, the Enforcement Bureau for their hard work has my full support.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm proud to support this item, and I want to give my thanks to the Enforcement Bureau for their hard work in doing this most essential of commission business. The good they've done, it cannot, in my opinion, be overstated. But Cox-Jones Enterprise has been attempting to reach us regarding our car's extended warranty. I'm pleased to say that today we have finally gotten back to them. Thanks again to everyone for their diligent work on this item.
All right. Maybe it happened to you last year. You picked up the phone and someone you didn't know, you didn't ask to call, tells you they have been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. It's a scam. The fraudsters responsible for this auto warranty scam flooded phone lines across the country with these junk calls. So we took action. We worked with our counterparts in the Ohio Attorney General's office to uncover the ring behind these calls and boot it off our networks. We started by giving all phone companies permission to cut off this traffic, and then followed it up with an order that, for the first time in this agency's history, flat out directed all phone companies to block it. It made a difference. According to RoboKiller, the steps we took reduced the number of auto warranty calls by 99%. But we're not stopping there, because today we take additional steps to hold responsible those who are behind this scam. We proposed the largest forfeiture in our history, nearly $300 million, against the perpetrators of this complex scheme, which includes entities based in Hungary and Panama. Next, I want us to move to a forfeiture order, and I hope that Congress will give us the authority to go to court and directly collect these fines from these bad actors. The good news is that the tools we use to get us to this point, straight up blocking of fraudulent calls, are ones we are already using in other contexts. In fact, if you weren't paying attention, earlier this month, we ordered phone companies to block the company responsible for about 40% of the scam calls involving student loans. And plus, we now have agreements with 43 state attorneys general, the District of Columbia, and Guam to go after illegal robocalls, just like we did here with the Ohio Attorney General. So our message is clear to those who would follow in the footsteps of the auto warranty scammers. We are watching, we are working with our state counterparts, and we will find you, block you, and hold you accountable. So thank you to the robocall response team for their efforts to uncover and stop this scam, with a special shout out to the Enforcement Bureau, and that includes Caitlin Barbaras, Loyan Igal, Lisa Gelb, Jessica Manuel, Raul Rojo, Daniel Stepanisic, Christy Thompson, Ashley Tyson, and Lisa Zana from the Enforcement Bureau, Aaron Garza and Karen Schroeder from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Eduardo Kureg, Kenneth Lynch, Alexander Simmons, and Ramesh Vinjabora from the Office of Economics and Analytics, Megan Davis, Richard Mallon, Wissam Noam, William Richardson, Derek Yeo, and Shin Yu from the Office of General Counsel, and Elizabeth Dragula and Ed Kratchmer from the Wireline Competition Bureau. Thank you for your efforts. And with that, would any of my colleagues like to make announcements at this time? We'll start with you, Commissioner Carr.
Just one for me. I want to say thank you to our fall semester intern, Terry Eisman. He's currently a 2L at GW here in DC, and he did great work for us this fall, including helping us out on the FCC Secure Equipment Act proceeding. I know it can be difficult juggling interning and law school at the same time, but thanks for the work. We appreciate it.
Commissioner Starks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Much like Commissioner Carr, except I have three that I want to also
Need
say
extra help.
fare thee well to. I'm sad to announce that Adelia Kim, Jade Poorman, and Anisha Dutt, my three fantastic fall interns, have transitioned back to their respective law schools. I wish them Godspeed on those winter finals that I have no doubt are coming, but more than that, really thank them for their fantastic work. We've accomplished a lot in the good number of months, the 4 or so months that they've been able to help me, help my team. I've greatly appreciated their efforts. I'd like to wish these three young women good luck, like I said, and look forward to following them as they continue their illustrious careers, no doubt. And although the internships are ending, they're always a part of Team Starks. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Symington, any announcements?
Thank you, not at this time.
Okay, well, everyone get comfortable. I got a lot. And we're going to start by doing something that we haven't done before, but hurricane season has come to an end, and we had some rough storms this year, but fewer communications outages than in years past. And while some of that involves Mother Nature, a whole lot of it involves the work of some terrific heroes who work at the agency. So I want to give them a shout out for their work during this past hurricane season. And that starts with Justin Kane, who led the overall response efforts. Also, I want to thank Tim Perrier, Jamie Rivas, Paul Coburn, and John O'Connor, who were deployed to Florida during Hurricane Ian and did a whole lot of spectrum monitoring, as well as Al Nur, who was in Florida at the Regional Response Coordination Center. I also want to thank Sean Cochran, who deployed to Florida during Hurricane Ian and was a part of our spectrum monitoring teams and also was part of our ESF2 coordination for Hurricane Fiona in Puerto Rico. Thank you also goes to Roberto Mussenden, who represented the Commission in the Puerto Rico Emergency Operations Center during Hurricane Fiona, and to Tim Perrier and Juan Silva for running our spectrum monitoring on the island. Last but not least, I just want to thank staff across the Commission who augmented our overall response efforts and ensured that we were receiving, processing, and sharing information on a regular basis. And those people are Brian Liu, Michael Califa, Sandra Becken, Sharon Hurd, Tia Cornwell, Joanne Smith, Brittany Stevenson, Rochelle Cohen, Will Wilquist, Michael Snyder, James Pearson, David Wright, Suzanne Barnes, Michael Fletcher, Jonathan Snyder, Corey Wallace, Mark Stednicki, Keith Davis, Vayon Cummings, Michael Evelyn, Jose Feliciano, John Lovins, Jay Smith, and Bill Kang. Thank you all for your work on hurricane communications. Really appreciate it. Again, like I mentioned, it's going to take some time because it's the end of the year, and that is a time when we're going to announce some departures, and we want to make sure that we give our colleagues some due. We'll start with the Enforcement Bureau. Chad Israel joined the FCC in 2001, and he actually has worked at the Enforcement Bureau's Equipment Development Group in Atlanta. Now, Chad is a tinkerer extraordinaire because he is responsible for the electrical and mechanical design, integration, and construction of many of the FCC systems that we have been using in-house. Just to give you an example, Chad was responsible for the field's covert surveillance vehicles and deployable and fixed remote RF sensing systems. He was, as you might imagine, famous for his can-do attitude and his innovative solutions, and he personally developed the Equipment Development Group in Atlanta to extraordinary heights. His colleagues also tell us that he is a barbecue whisperer, so we hope there is some serious grilling in his retirement future. Now, Ann Morgan is also retiring. She is a telecommunications accessibility specialist who has done a lot of different things during her 49 years of government service. Now, early in her tenure at the Commission, she worked for what was then called the Common Carrier Bureau. She also worked in Commissioner Margita White's office, and then the newly formed Office of Public Affairs, where she was administrative manager. She later spent time in the Office of Managing Director and then as Deputy Assistant Chief for Management in the predecessor to our current Media Bureau. She's concluding her FCC service with 18 years in the Enforcement Bureau's Telecommunications Consumers Division. She's helped on robocalling cases, and she's been a key member of our privacy team working on the annual CP&I certification process. She's also someone who has regularly acted as a photographer to document FCC social events. We appreciate that. She's also led some of the division's work on the combined federal campaign. We thank her for her service, and we wish her well. In the Media Bureau, we have Deputy Chief Sarah Whitesell. She's retiring at the end of the year after a long and very distinguished career at the Commission. She served in a whole bunch of different capacities for us, including as Attorney Advisor in the International and Common Carrier Bureaus, Associate Chief of the Cable Bureau, Legal Advisor to Acting Chairwoman Mignon Clyburn. For media issues, Acting Legal Advisor to Commissioner Jonathan Adelstein on media issues, and Legal Advisor to Commissioner Gloria Tristani on common carrier issues. She has a reputation in these halls for encyclopedic knowledge in telecommunications and media, and it's true. Her expertise and leadership is going to be missed. She's a friend to so many people at this agency, so thank you for your tremendous public service career, and we wish you well in your retirement. Next, we're going to move to the Office of Economics and Analytics, where Marilyn Simon has been the go-to economist for so many international bureau issues over the years, especially those relating to satellites. She worked on the old Orbit Act report, the Satellite Competition Report, and of course the satellite sections of its successor, the Communications Marketplace Report, which my colleagues can vote any day now. In addition, Marilyn has helped on mergers and contributed to submarine cable and satellite rulemakings. Before joining the Commission, she worked as an economist at the Department of Justice, and she taught as a professor at MIT. Her deep knowledge, efficiency, and professionalism are just flat out going to make her hard to replace. But our thanks go to Marilyn for her long career of public service, and we wish her the best in retirement. In the Office of Economics and Analytics, we're also saying goodbye to Jerry Duval, who's held a whole bunch of different academic and consulting positions in his career. But more importantly, he has had a long and distinguished career at the FCC. He advised FCC Commissioners Ann Jones and Mimi Wayforth Dawson on economic issues. And more recently, he served as Chief Economist of the Media Bureau and then the International Bureau. In these halls, he is well known for trying to get to the correct answer, and he has been working to make sure that he can convince his colleagues of that every day, every time. What's more is he is known for bringing out the best in those around him. He has also consistently promoted economic research by other commission staff and has really just been a terrific resource for folks at the agency. We're going to miss him as a colleague, and again, we wish him the best. Pam Megna has had stints in the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau and Office of Plans and Policy, but most of her career was spent in the Wireline Competition Bureau. During that time, and I remember this, she was involved in the oversight of the Bell operating companies, their acquisitions and interactions with competitive local exchange carriers, and changes to all manner of wireline regulatory obligations. She's also been our go-to person for broadband reports for over 10 years, and she's known at this agency as a great team player, willing to share her knowledge and experience. She is also known for her annual presentation that she gives to her colleagues on selecting your federal employee benefits. It's extremely well intended, and we all appreciate that additional support. We wish her the best. Chuck Needy has been instrumental in the success of the Office of Economics and Analytics. In fact, in that office, he is known as a cost-benefit institution. He has applied a creative approach to cost-benefit analyses that incorporates findings from peer-reviewed research, and his efforts have appeared in all kinds of decisions at the agency. He's also done work on jurisdictional separations and analyzing terminating access monopolies, issues that are not for the faint of heart. Although we're grateful he prepared many of us by teaching us tricks of the trade, especially with respect to cost-benefit analysis, Chuck is going to be sorely missed. Anne Levine started at the FCC as a policy analyst in our Media Bureau working on competition analysis. Shortly thereafter, she joined the Office of Strategic Planning, and where she focused on data management. In fact, back in 2009, she co-authored our 60-day data review, which was a report that recommended the hiring of a chief data officer, the first in a civilian federal agency. She also contributed to the establishment of the Office of Economics and Analytics Data Division and the naming of a new chief data officer. As our deputy chief data officer, she's focused on compliance with the Foundations for Evidence-Based Planning Act. We wish Anne all the best as she starts the next chapter of her life in London. In the Office of Engineering and Technology, we are saying goodbye to Tom Mooring, who is retiring after 38 and a half years of federal service. He first joined the commission way back in 1990 after serving 6 years in the Navy. He has spent his entire career in what is now the Office of Engineering and Technology, and he's worked with a whole bunch of different bureaus during that time on radio frequency spectrum allocation matters. And in fact, he actually created the FCC online spectrum allocation table and the FCC allocation history file. We are going to miss his expertise. We wish him the best in his retirement. Ronald Williams is also retiring with 20 years of federal service. Prior to coming to the FCC, he worked at the Department of Defense Information Systems Agency, and prior to that, served for 20 years in the Air Force. When he joined the FCC in 2018, he was the Deputy Division Chief of the Office of Engineering Technology Laboratory Division in Columbia, Maryland, and in February of 2020, he was reassigned as Chief of the Office of Engineering and Technology Laboratory. So thank you, Ron, for your service. Again, we wish you the best in your retirement. In the Office of Media Relations, we are saying goodbye to Britt Stevenson, and she's going to be leaving the commission after a little more than a decade of service, most recently serving as the principal who heads up the agency's digital engagement and social media outreach. Under her watch, she launched several platforms at the commission, and she has grown our social media followings by too many likes and followers to count. She's been instrumental in creating content for some of our biggest initiatives, including the Rescan Your TV campaign, the Emergency Connectivity Fund, National Broadband Maps, the 988 Lifeline, the Affordable Connectivity Program, running app challenges. She's been producing a whole lot of videos and a whole lot more. We are sad to lose her. Appreciate her good humor, her dedication and service, and we wish her great success in the next chapter of her career. In the Office of Workplace Diversity, we're saying goodbye after 23 years of government service to Cynthia Bryant. Her FCC career included work in 3 bureaus, the International Bureau, the Enforcement Bureau, and the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. She's also the past president of the Benjamin L. Hooks Chapter for Blacks in Government, and most recently she served as special counsel for alternative dispute resolution in the Office of Workplace Diversity. And as she retires, we know that she's made a lot of contributions to a lot of different places in this agency, and we send her our best wishes. In the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, we're saying goodbye to Ken Burley, who is a senior attorney in the Operations and Emergency Management Division, and he's retiring from the FCC after 25 years. Ken's not only a lawyer, but he's an electronics engineer who earlier in his career worked at Hughes Aircraft Company and Rockwell on missile laser guidance systems and the space shuttle. During his FCC career, Ken has worked on location and monitoring services and fixed point-to-point microwave service in the 39 gigahertz band. He also worked on public warning development and coordinated with FEMA on homeland security concerns regarding national telecommunications infrastructure. And he was among the first staff that we had in the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, where he worked on incident management and continuity plans, as well as legal support for local number portability administration. Thank you, Ken. We'll miss you, and we wish you the best of luck in your next adventure. Okay, I swear to you, the last one. Pam Arluck is going to be retiring, and she's here, from the FCC service after 20 years in the Wireline Competition Bureau. During her time, she led not just one, but 2 different divisions in that bureau at the FCC. She worked as chief of the Competition Policy Division, responsible for rules reducing unwanted robocalls, designating 988 as the nationwide 3-digit number for mental health crisis and suicide prevention. She also led the pricing division, where she was responsible for reducing the costs of inmate calling services. A true Renaissance woman, Pam manages to balance knowledge and good humor. And I just said good humor, and I meant it. You see, Pam also moonlighted as a stand-up comic, grinding her way through open mic nights around the DC area just to take the edge off. I don't know, maybe we should try it. She's actually very well known at the FCC, not just for her stand-up tour, but also for sending off folks at retirement parties with rhymes. And so today we decided to end this with our own attempt. Pam, thanks for your service to the Commission. You have always valued the FCC's mission. Whenever we miss you and start to feel low, we'll stop by where the Comedy Club holds a stand-up show. And with that, there you go. I will keep my day job. Okay, one final note. As this year ends, I also want to take a moment to thank all the FCC staff who work every day to serve the public. We've accomplished so much over the past 12 months, and none of it would have been possible without the dedication of the tremendous public servants who make up this agency. I really hope the slower pace of the next week, allows everyone to enjoy some time with their families, friends, and loved ones, and make some new memories this holiday season. And with that, Madam Secretary, will you please announce the date for the Commission's next monthly agenda meeting?
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, January 26, 2023.
Until then, we stand adjourned.
Good afternoon, everyone. Could we please move any outside conversations to the hallway, please? Any outside conversations? Could we please move them to the hallway? We're about to get started with the chairwoman's post-meeting press conference. All right, thanks y'all for taking the temperature down a little bit, volume down a little bit. Hi, welcome everyone to our last post-open meeting press conference. For those who haven't joined us before, the chairwoman will join me after I do this brief introduction. We'll have one question per outlet, and then we will have the Bureau press conference. So with that introduction, Madam Chairwoman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's the end of the year, so let's get started. Go ahead, Gabriella.
I always forget which button to press.
I know, there's like this performance anxiety with these buttons, but don't worry, we hear you.
Good afternoon. So I wanted to ask about the mapping challenge process. As you may be aware, some states have been raising concerns about the tight timeline with that first, I think it's January 13th deadline for states to challenge. Have you given any thought to extending that, or how, whether there'll be another process, considering that's also going to be how NTIA does its beat allocations?
So I want to make clear that we've got 2 different laws here, 2 different agencies. The first, of course, is the FCC, and we have a responsibility under the Broadband Data Act to build a broadband fabric that identifies what broadband services are available in every location in this country. We're working on that, and that obligation is not a one-time thing. It's iterative. We need to produce that map every 6 months, and our efforts to improve it, we are, of course, taking in challenges to the underlying fabric, as well as challenges to broadband providers who assert that they have service in a location where a customer may, for instance, suggest they do not. So processing those challenges takes some time, energy, and efforts, and we accept challenges on a rolling basis. They can come in last week, next week, tomorrow, late January, at any time. And under the law, we actually have certain schedules under which we're going to move through those availability challenges. With respect to January 13th, that date you chose, that was the NTIA in its efforts to try to identify a time by which challenges might come in and get incorporated in the next map. So that's not a date that's in our rules in any way, shape, and form. It's just a target that was set by my colleagues at NTIA to try to ensure that as many challenges get resolved as possible before our production of the next map. But I have also been on the phone with a lot of state broadband offices during the last week, and I have many more calls coming in the next 2 days. We were trying to walk them through this process and assure them that they can file challenges with us at any time. We will make sure to work with them, try to understand what their ground truth suggests, and incorporate the facts in our national map. So we're going to continue to work with the states under all circumstances today, tomorrow, and going forward.
Hi, how you doing? David McGarry from Broadband Breakfast. Commissioner Symington suggested at the PLI conference requiring device manufacturers to iteratively provide cybersecurity updates for their devices. Do you have any thoughts on the proposal?
I'll follow up with Commissioner Symington and talk some more with him about him to learn some details.
Thank you.
Hi, Peter Sumler with MLEX. My question is, on two cases that are in front of you, is how you're cooperating with the Justice Department that both have second requests. One's on Tegna and one other on the Emersat Viasat takeover. How is the FCC in this period working with these antitrust authorities, with the DOJ specifically? And are you waiting for the DOJ to make a decision on their investigations before you hold a vote? I don't know if you're going to, if the commission is going to hold a full vote on the approval of transferring the licenses to Tegna to Standard General and on the Emersat Viasat deal.
I'm familiar with both transactions, but it's not our practice to comment on pending applications.
But just how it works, just in general, between the DOJ?
It's not our practice to comment on the transactions pending before us.
Hi, Chairwoman. Chris Cole with Law 360. I just wanted to ask, you had alluded to Spectrum Auction Authority earlier, and I'm just wondering, is there a level of frustration? If so, could you describe it about the proposal for a short-term extension and how you see this playing out?
Our Spectrum auctions have been a terrific tool for distributing public airwaves in this country. They have raised more than $233 billion over the course of many years. I appreciate that Congress has taken note that continuing to have that authority will have revenue opportunities and will also ensure that the United States can continue to lead in commercial activity when it comes to making sure that the wireless economy has the infrastructure it needs to further develop.
Good morning. Hi, Todd Shields with Bloomberg News. A group called Consumers Research has sued the Federal Communications Commission in court, saying that the Universal Service Fund is improperly set up, and they seek to, I guess, invalidate it. So are they right or wrong, and what should happen with the Universal Service Fund?
As you may know, we just had oral argument on that case a few weeks ago, and the FCC defended the Universal Service Fund, which has been in place since the Telecommunications Act of 1996 and has been an important tool for the distribution of resources to make sure that we have comparable service in comparable places in rural, low-income, and high-cost regions of the country. It's an important tool for ensuring communications for everyone, everywhere, and the FCC defended it in court.
What should happen to the fund?
I'm not sure what you mean by what should happen to the fund.
There's been debate about the funding, the increase of the contribution factor. There was a report by the FCC this summer that examined it, and at the end of this litigation, the litigation may not be successful, but it'll still be an issue going forward, what to do with the fund. So that's my broad question.
I absolutely believe we're still going to have discussions about this going forward, and I do acknowledge that this court case and the decision that it yields is going to be an important part of that discussion.
All right, thank you, Chairwoman. And with that, we conclude the Chairwoman's press conference. I call up one of my colleagues from the Office of Media Relations to run the Bureau press conference.
So for the Bureau press conference, as usual, we're going to take questions on the items themselves that were voted, adopted today. So I'll just ask if there's any questions on each item. If there are, we'll call up the teams to take those questions. So are there any questions on the first item, the digital discrimination? Okay, so if the task force and anyone else can join me up here, CGB, who was involved in that, or whoever was the presenters. Hey, Dwana. Okay, Gabrielle?
So I was hoping that you could clarify whether the item is proposing to define digital discrimination this way, or if it's seeking comment on whether it should be included. The disparate treatment and discriminatory impact standard, I was hoping you can provide some clarification on exactly how that would factor in to the definition.
Hi. The item does propose a definition of digital discrimination of access and seeks comment on the proposed definition. The definition provides a framework, the proposed definition, and could be tailored in response to comments received in response to the NPRM. So there is a proposed definition, but the definition is subject to comment and to modification in light of comments that come in response to the NPRM.
And were there any other, major changes to the final item from the draft, or were they just kind of whatever you received from ex partes that were filed?
We made changes. Commissioner Starks indicated some changes in his statement in terms of additional questions. We received a number of ex partes, and so we've made changes in response to those ex partes, points raised by the ex partes.
Peter Sun with MLEX. Yeah, was this the issue that Starks was raising about discriminatory algorithms? There's moves all over the country, either on state AG levels and federal, about taking action of those algorithms that prove themselves discriminatory. Is there anything the FCC is planning to do or has done on this action of taking action on the algorithm that could be proved out, discriminatory? I think that one was like American Disabilities Act, but is there anything else in the works with FCC level?
So we're taking questions on this particular item, so I'm not sure if this item addresses that or not, or I don't know that well, sorry.
Let me just say that the proposed definition, could conceivably encompass that subject matter, and that's one of the issues that we see comment on.
Any other questions on this item? All right, thanks, guys. And do we have any questions on the International Bureau satellite proceeding? No? Okay. You do? Okay. International Bureau? Are you guys? Okay.
All right.
Hello?
Okay.
Peter?
Yeah. The questions are regarding the Viasat-Inmarsat deal. Are the changes in CFIUS rulings going to make this easier and more difficult in the future when an international acquirer goes for a domestic satellite operator?
That's not really relevant to this proceeding.
I mean, it's all about licensing and transfer. It is sort of relevant.
This particular item is not relevant.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Anything else on this item? All right. Thanks, guys. All right. So next up is the 911 routing item. Any questions for the Public Safety Bureau on that item? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, team. And then the next item is the captioned phone call item. Okay. Is the CGB team, Bureau? Great. Thanks. Gabrielle?
So I understand that there were some edits that were sought by Commissioner Starks regarding functional equivalence with ASR on this item. Could you talk a little bit more about kind of what those changes were to this item and whether any other edits were made to the final item?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I'm happy to defer to the DRO team who had those conversations.
Yeah, we made a number of changes in response to ex partes, and I think Commissioner Starks indicated in his statement the change we made in response to his concern about algorithms.
Any other questions on this item? All right, great. Thank you very much. And last but not least, any questions for the Enforcement Bureau on their item? No? Okay, going once, going twice. All right, thank you very much. That will be the end of the Bureau press conference. I think Commissioner Carr is here, so I'll hand it off to him. Thank you all very much.
Thanks so much. Good to see you all again for the last press conference, hopefully, of the year. So happy holidays to everybody. I think since we last had a press conference, I completed a trip to Taiwan, which was really productive. Got to meet with my regulatory counterparts there and continue to deepen the partnership between the U.S. and Taiwan, which I think is very important at this moment as the CCP continues to saber rattle towards the island. In fact, since my trip to Taiwan, I had a chance to host my counterparts there from the NCC, their version of the FCC, here at the FCC. So again, really glad to see us continue to deepen our partnership, including on cybersecurity, network resiliency, and those issues. Since we last talked, there's also been a lot of really good, significant progress when it comes to addressing the national security threats posed by TikTok. I think, as you've seen, there's up to 19 states now that have taken action to ban TikTok on state devices. I think that's a very welcome step. There was now in the Senate passed unanimously a ban on federal devices and TikTok, which has now been inserted as well in the omnibus. So I would expect that by the end of this week, we'll likely have it as a matter of federal law that TikTok is banned from all federal devices. And I think that's a really important step. It's a step that, goes beyond merely saying that federal devices shouldn't have social media on it. It's a unique determination as to TikTok. And I think that reflects, in my view, the very unique national security threat that the app poses. And this is a view that's shared by the Biden administration's national security officials. If you look, CIA Director Burns recently said that there's genuine concerns with TikTok. If you look at the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, she's agreed that parents should be concerned. And FBI Director Chris Wray has said that the FBI has very serious concerns. And I think the mounting concerns, not just about national security, but about parents, is something that's really important to highlight. So I've been pleased to see the progress that's been made there. And of course, there's now a bipartisan bill in the House that will go beyond a federal device ban and make a nationwide ban. And so I think this puts in stark contrast the need for the Biden administration to complete its ongoing Treasury review and do so in a way that doesn't compromise U.S. national security. So with that, happy to take some questions.
Chris Cole with Law 360. On TikTok, do you have a sense of where the larger ban is going in terms of not just the government ban, but the national ban?
So this is something that's in the hands of the Treasury Department. They run a process out of CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. And there was a Politico report that I saw, I believe from Friday of last week, that said that while the administration had a preliminary deal in place with TikTok at the end of the summer, progress on finishing that deal and getting across the finish line have largely stalled out over the last couple months as the concern about national security continues to grow. And that same report indicates that there's a very live debate, based on my reading, inside the Biden administration about what exactly to do with TikTok, with the national security officials increasingly speaking out, and according to this Politico report, but being in favor of an outright ban as opposed to some compromise that would allow the current corporate structure of TikTok to continue to operate. So for my part, I'm rooting for the Biden administration's national security officials. I don't think this is something where we can compromise on in terms of threats to U.S. national security. We have to be certain that we're taking action here to protect the U.S. So I personally don't know the timeline for the Treasury Department's review. It could be soon at this point. The review has been ongoing for a while. It's important that they do bring it to a close because right now we are totally exposed. There are no protections in place right now with respect to the data flowing back to Beijing and as well the content that's coming back through the Beijing-based algorithm. So I'd encourage the Biden administration to wrap that up in a way that doesn't compromise on national security.
Nice to see you, Commissioner. So banning TikTok obviously would more or less solve the TikTok problem, but are there any policies that you would hope to see that would address the larger problem of data security from apps? Obviously, Congressman Gallagher is now heading up the Select Committee on China, and he seems to be concerned in these issues as well. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Congressman Gallagher has been doing really, really good work on this. In fact, he paired up with Democrat Congressman Krishnamurthy on the nationwide TikTok ban. I think it's important that we move now on TikTok, given the unique threats, but there are other ways in which we need to act. We can't simply play, whack-a-mole with individual apps. I do believe there's something unique about TikTok that deserves action now, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And you look at some of the actions that are being taken. Virginia Governor Youngkin took action not just on TikTok, but on WeChat as well. So there is a broader process that we need to put in place that addresses the potential data flows back into China more broadly. I think that's going to be an important piece of it. But TikTok right now is a very serious threat for which there's a lot of momentum to take action, so we need to do that.
Hi, Commissioner. So I have a question on mapping. With, I think it's January 9th, January 13th are the two dates that the FCC and NTIA have kind of been looking at to start looking at the next iteration of maps, especially with the BEAD allocations being based off of that. Some states have been raising concerns about the challenge process itself, the legal challenges, complexities just of challenging the fabric and availability data itself. What do you think the FCC should be doing to help states make sure that they are, challenging everything to the best that they can, getting the right data in time as, all this money is going to be coming out the door in the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, well, we have to get this right. I mean, that's my bottom line. We got to get it right. We got a lot of money on the line, as you indicated, $40+ billion. We need to get that money out the door pursuant to accurate maps to make sure that we're not overbuilding, that we're not missing communities that still have 0 megabits over 0 megabits. So as we look at all of these issues that you've raised, our guide star has to be to get this right.
Yeah, I wanted to also ask on one of the items today that you voted on with the digital discrimination item. I know one of the issues that some providers have raised is looking at technical or economic and feasibility. So how are you hoping to use this proceeding to look at ensuring that there is no digital discrimination happening while also understanding the needs and challenges that providers may have?
Yeah, this is something I'm open-minded to. We teed up a lot of questions, the chair did, in the draft that circulated, the draft we ended up voting on. I'm looking forward to the robust record that's developed that looks at all of those, key terms from the statute, provides us with feedback on it. And at this point, I'm very open-minded to work with my colleagues and see how we can potentially land this at an order.
And then I was going to follow up on the mapping issue. There have been some state officials who have floated the idea of essentially pushing everything back by 60 days in terms of the BEAD deadlines. Now, obviously, like the chairwoman pointed out, a lot of that's in the NTIA's hands. But do you think that a 60-day postponement would, or maybe could be effective and significant in improving the maps?
Well, look, we got to get this right, and I do think we need to keep working with NTIA, keep working with our state counterparts, make sure that everybody understands the process. And at the end of the day, we've got to take actions that ensure that we get this right. Again, $40+ billion right on this, the chance for hopefully once and for all end the digital divide. So the actions that we take in response to all of those requests have to be guided by, what do we need to do to get this right? Anything else? Going once? Todd Shields, gone. All right, thanks all, appreciate it, see you.